Hello and welcome to a special edition of the In the Money Players podcast. Actually, as of this moment, I'm not sure if we're going to release this as audio. It may be a YouTube exclusive. We shall see. What I can tell you for sure is that it is sponsored by our friends over at RaceLens. Happy to be partnered with them again. We've got two really nice promos, one for new and one for existing RaceLens customers. You can sign up for an unlimited RaceLens monthly subscription and get the first month for only $1. That is the promo code In the Money. And for former and current customers, we've got a special offer. You can come back and try or extend your current plan and enjoy a 40% off any unlimited RaceLens subscription. Promo code In the Money 40. To learn more, go to inthemoneypodcast.com/RaceLens. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, here for this special show, joined by our RaceLens power user. We're going to be talking RaceLens. We're going to be talking about the upcoming Saratoga meet with Matt Vagvolgyi. Matt, how are things?
Doing great, Pete. We're getting close. The traffic is picking up around here. The hashtag Saratoga is trending on Twitter. So I think we're getting close.
Fantastic. As you could probably tell, not in Saratoga just yet, still in the woods of Maine. Going to be getting in time for our live show on Sunday at the Brentwood. That's going to be great fun. Spencer Luganbuehl going to be joining me at the Brentwood. We're going to be live streaming that on YouTube as well. We encourage folks to check up with all our content in themoneypodcast.com or on the YouTube page through for In the Money Media. Lots of great stuff coming your way. Lots of special stuff for this Saratoga meet. Going to be having our pro player roundtable show. Still trying to finalize the lineup for that. But really excited, Matt, to talk with you about this upcoming Saratoga meet and specifically how you use RaceLens to prepare for it. Let's start with a little bit more of the evergreen content, if you will. I would like to get a look, and you're willing to share your screen here with us, at what your RaceLens, what basically, like for the uninitiated, what it looks like for those who are familiar with it, maybe to get a little bit of a sneak peek of some of your angles. We're going to share your home screen there, so folks watching on YouTube can check that out. Give us a sense of how you use the program.
Yeah, so this is the home screen. This is what I've referred to many times as one of the first things I open up every morning, just to see what's out there. No matter what racing card it is. Obviously you can toggle up top, from different days, but basically what it's showing me, any angles or any kind of research that I've done that I have saved that ends up being specific to a particular horse at a particular track will show up, as you can see on the left side of the screen, right? So it'll tell me I have 105 different angles that have popped up for Saratoga. Are all of them angles that are, stuff that I view as angles? Many of them are what I call as saved research, like, rail position on the turf, post 10 plus on the dirt, like things like that I want to save because you never know, things might change. And I'll give you an example going back to Belmont. And we've talked about this. You actually kind of got this idea in my head about, looking at mile and 16th on the turf, that kind of dogleg start, how the inside does, how the outside does. And the inside, the rail position was absolutely atrocious, just terrible. And then you go to this year and it was off the charts. And as an example, I remember scrolling through and seeing that it popped up. As you can see, these angles are in green. That means it hits a positive ROI and a high success score for whatever angle that I've made. That popped up and I said, wow, let me take a look at this. And sure enough, that trend completely changed. And it got me to look at the inside a little bit different, again, going to mile 16th on the turf at Belmont. So
I wonder what happened. I mean, it was such an unusual configuration. I know it's the Saratoga show, but we'll start by talking Belmont, because who knows, maybe we could find some bet backs here. But whenever you have a really unusual course configuration, maybe they changed the way they angled the gate. Who knows? Or maybe it was randomness all along. But it did always used to just visually look weird for those inside horses that they almost had to make two moves coming right out of the gate. Anyway, it's fascinating. And as a data guy, less interested in the why sometimes than you are in, hey, well, this is something that's happening and this is something I need to pay attention to. I assume that's your, when you're looking at these angles, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to keep everything in perspective, right? I mean, you can't just look at any angle or any statistic. We've talked about this before, Pete, where you're just blindly betting it. There's a couple that have been pretty darn close to being blind bets. That's how good they've gotten. But it's more of a piece of the puzzle, right? I think that's my biggest emphasis on utilizing this as a part of your handicapping process, right? Some things that might draw you to a horse to look at it a little bit deeper, but also maybe some angles that are negative that you want to toss the horse out, right? You look at the horse, doesn't fit, you want to remove it, you want to get it out. So you start to then concentrate on where you feel the horses are that you want to play, right? So again, it's all about using your brain fuel the best as possible. I would say that's probably the best way that I use data, something like this, to focus on the right horses, building tickets, making the right bets, that sort of thing. So this is where it really helps. This is the home screen that kind of gives me an idea as to what's going on. And again, as you scroll through, you'll see every single race will have any angle that is associated with it, right? So again, it gives you, all different ideas here of different horses you can play. Like for instance, if I want to look at, let's say, we'll touch on this at the end, but like, one of the top angles, looking at, 50% tag drops, on the dirt for maiden races at Saratoga, right? It's just a popular angle. I think it flows into ownership. I know, I think it might sound a little bit crazy, but those are the types of things I like to look at Saratoga, of what is your intent of putting your horse into this race.
It's fascinating.
Where other tracks you may look at it as a negative, but at Saratoga, sometimes it's all about getting in the winner's circle, right? So that becomes
Definitely
a real angle and a real thing to look at. And, again, if I want to, take a look and actually go to the past performances, I can click on it and bring it right up, right? And again, to be honest with you, I like to use Timeform as kind of my home base for PPs, but I do have these up as well because they do offer a lot of canned angles and statistics, whether, trainer, trainer, jockey, that sort of thing.
That's interesting. That's nice to have that right there at a glance. All those questions that you might ask yourself that, I mean, hell, we'll mention formulator. You have to do the digging and look it up. It's kind of nice to just have it pop up there. And I imagine are those when you say canned, are they the same for every single one, or are they tailored a little bit to like the angle that you might be looking for in that race based on the situation, or geared towards positives and negatives? How does that work?
So the angles that you create are separate from this. So this would be the same. If there's different formats you can use, I use the Equibase format. They're going to be the same for every user. So if you're new to it, you jump on it, you're going to see the same stats that show up, and they're pretty much the same, right? Like last 10 days, 30 days for a jockey, distance, surface, that sort of thing. And then for the trainer,
by the way, I love those short-term, having that short-term fluctuation of form stat in your face. Super useful, especially for a circuit you're not playing all the time for a contest player.
Yeah, exactly. And then over here, I think for the trainer side, it gets a little bit more in depth. So if there's anything that jumps off the page as a really, I know this might not be the best example here, but if it jumps off the page, like if they're really good in stake races, if they're really good 30 to 60 days off the layoff, sprint to route, first time turf, like all of those things will be done for you and will show up just by clicking on the horse in the past performances.
That's cool.
So that's a pretty cool thing. And then up top here, it has all the Equibase pace profiles, right? So early, middle, and late pace figures, how this horse stands against the group here. So you get an idea of their pace perspective, average class, speed. So a lot of really good data that's very simple to identify just by glancing at the horse in one click, right? So again, that's a good foundation as to why I've used this for so long, is the ease of finding the information. I don't have to dig and make 7 different clicks to get there, right? I can utilize this. I can take a look to see, okay, look at the pace profile, average speed, any angles that pop up for the trainer or jockey, and then I can kind of go from there.
Let's go back to the beginning. When you first open those PPs, I'm just going to take a guess that about the first thing you're going to look for is those green angles. Is that right? Is a place to start?
Yeah, I'd say that's safe to say, because the way that I've said it, it has to have a minimum. You can change this. You can adjust how these angles show up. So what I do is I want to show at least a positive ROI, and I want to show a success score of at least 6 or above But again, you can adjust that. You can change it as you feel. But I want to see, again, ROI to me is the number one thing, right? And then I can go look at it differently in terms of win percentages. The win percentage might be extremely high, but a negative ROI, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because folks are betting it, but it's hitting at a high clip, right? So that's something that does play into maybe a pick 6 bet or pick 5s where I really like this horse. Now I'm seeing some angles that I like, that high win percentage. Maybe that's the last thing that pushes me in to say, okay, I'm going to single this horse or try to build my tickets around this horse. So different ways you can look at it. But you're right, Pete. It's for the positive angles, the way I said it, those are the ones that are going to jump off. Another horse here, another angle that I'll mention, kind of track profiles. I can run angles to show how horses do coming from other tracks, right? So if I want to see how they are from, like this one here, shipping from Churchill from the dirt. So the last race at Churchill on the dirt, coming over to Saratoga on the dirt, how successful has that move been? It's been very positive, right? And I guess it's a good idea where if I take a look to see, okay, this gives me kind of the year look. So that's the default, right? Is looking at over the year. But if I click on the angle, it's going to show me exactly how the angle is built, right? And then from there, what I can do is, so you'll see the track today is Saratoga. We're on the dirt. And then the last track this horse ran on the dirt was Churchill Downs, right? So then it gives you a breakdown of the total races, the total starters, win percentage, place show. There's that success score I was talking about. And then it gives you the ROI, right? So it gives you a simple breakdown right away. But I want to say, let's take a look and go back 5 years, get a larger sample size and see how this is done. You'll see this is still a very strong
Even
angle.
stronger. Yeah.
Exactly. So 20% winners, 16% ROI. We're looking at we're looking at 324 races as the sample size, right? So I think again, that's the ease. If you've noticed, it's just the simple clicks to get this kind of information. And I'll show you a couple more of how that.
Let's pause for a second, Matt, because there's two things I want to clarify. Well, just go further into. One is I just want to explain the why of why you might want to look at 1 year versus 5 year. I mean, I think you already were starting to explain it. To me, as we did, perfect example of that Belmont inner rail mile and a 16th on the turf stat, things can change. So to be able to see, you're generally speaking, you're much more likely, I would say, to see more signal in those 5 year numbers than in the 1 year numbers. But the 1 year numbers are going to catch when the worm turns. And the worm turns for a lot of different reasons in horse racing, whether it's a trainer whose stats change because he's getting different types of horses. I'll bring an ancient example out of the mothballs for this one. This one might even be before your time, Matt, but maybe at the beginning of your coming into the game. For when I was, a young horse player, there was like a 5 year stretch where Nick Zito just did not win with first time starters. Then he started buying at the sales with Robert LaPenta, and he all of a sudden had this new client buying all these fast 2-year-olds. And then there was a year at Saratoga, he won 7 maiden races. So somebody looking at 5 year stats at that point might have said, well, but after the first 1 or 2 won, might have still been saying, oh, this guy doesn't win with first time starters. But then, you pay attention to the way things change, and you got to be nimble in this game. And I feel like using the 1 year view and the 5 year view, that can sort of help you account for that. And to me, the examples that you really are going to be the most exciting to me are when the 1 year and the 5 year match, like they did in this angle. Is that a decent reflection? Any other ways that you use the 1 year and 5 year?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just to kind of piggyback on your point, right? If we use, back to the 1 year, let's say it was different, right? Let's say it was a drastic increase, like you're saying, where I would say the month and the 2 weeks come into play. So you can actually go down to the last 2 weeks. I know this will be all zeros here because Saratoga's not open yet.
Correct.
Right? But as the meet goes on, I'm going to click those because I want to see if something is starting to change there. And let's say that it did. This details tab is fantastic. I click the details and it literally gives me
bring up all the runners.
All the runners, everything here that you need. And if I want to sort and say, okay, just show me, sort by all the winners, right? So I can sort that all here by every horse that's won. I have the trainer, I have the odds, the trainer, jockey, sire, the dam, everything in just a click. I've got all that information, right? And this is where the rat hole comes in. This is like a disease of me, but again, something that I enjoy doing. If I want to see what Latruska did in terms of this race, short price favorite, if I click on the date, guess what I get? I get the Equibase chart.
That's great.
Right. So I get all of that information, anything pari-mutually I wanted to look at, any of the comments in the run lines, different calls, the pace figures are in here as well. So again, it's just to emphasize the simplicity of a lot of this, a lot of data, a lot of information that's very simple to get to in a couple of clicks.
I had one other little tangent before we get back to, we'll go then back to the basics. I also, I have questions about those projected win odds we see. And I also want you to demonstrate at some point the specifics of how you put an angle together. We'll get to that. But I want to talk about the success score for a minute. Mm-hmm. What I'm assuming this is just some sort of algorithm that we don't know the particulars of, that is basically something that's going to act as a proxy for how often something happens, how repeatable it is, how much we think an angle might go forward. How would you put it in your words?
You nail it, Pete. That's exactly what it is. It's a projection of how successful this particular angle is long term. Gotcha. Right. So using as much of a source of data possible holistically. And the reason why I said it at 7 is that's where I see it really start to shine in terms of those longer term projections. So
really good.
Again, you can play with that. That's really kind of up to you, and why you can change a lot of those things there. I'm just giving you my opinion. I've looked at that quite a bit, and I found that 7 and above is really a solid long-term holistic projection as to how successful that angle is over time.
And that's to combat the idea that you'll see when you just do ROI, and anybody who's ever spent any time doing playing around in a database like Formulator, you'll occasionally see the stat with the lower win percentage and maybe even lower place and show returns, but the ROI is positive. And you go to the list and, there's 150 to 1 shot that's skewing it and makes the ROI look good. But trying to expect this to happen again is akin to, finding a wallet on the street on Saturday and going back on Sunday and expecting there to be another one. One anomalous result changes it. The success score, I would imagine, levels that out and tries to make it stuff that, again, is going to be much more likely to be repeatable.
Yeah, that's a great point too. And I use that for the win percentage, right? Win percentage, but a negative, 30% ROI. What that tells me, you're not that smart. The public knows all of this already. So there's no point to even look at it. Right. So it's all baked in, but that's useful information, because it can go the opposite way, where there's a strong win percentage. The ROI is high. Again, I click on that details tab and it brings up the final odds. And if I see a range of 6, 7 to 1, 10 to 1, that's telling me that the public's not necessarily on this yet. Right. So that becomes even more fruitful, I think, of utilizing that particular data to build into your plays. So no, I think it's a great relationship between showing the ROI, the win percentage, et cetera, to really see how successful will this be, or are you going to go broke betting this all the time?
Let's go back to this card at Saratoga on Thursday, just for fun. Didn't prep you for this, but just for fun. I feel like clicking through some of the other green things that pop up, if you don't mind showing us a little bit more. I assume there were 2 in that first race, and there haven't been any in the second or third, but I assume we'll get some as we go through. I'm just curious to give people an idea of some of the kinds of things they can do. Then I want to talk about those other things we mentioned. But here's one. Oh, very interesting. And this one, probably the surprise to me on this angle, Matt, is not that Rosario and Clement do particularly well on the inner turf, but the idea that the public hasn't gotten to that, to the point where there's still a 66% ROI. Maybe, just as I theorize, maybe it's because so many of these races are so loaded, and you're going to have, everybody knows Clement Rosario do so well, but you got to think this is also a race, and these have been races over the years with so many Chad Brown and Bill Mott and you name it, other hotshot trainers, that somehow it's ended up a little bit underrated anyway. How important or how good of a tool is Race Lens when it comes to doing jockey and trainer work?
I think I would say this. I think where I really emphasize it and use it as much as I can is I'm trying to see intent from the connections, right? And as you can see, if you're looking on the screen here, like I've got ship it in from Belmont, right? From the turf, we're posted, between 1 and 3. Then I have general angles of Rosario, right? Of like just turf routes in general at Saratoga, how Joel has done. Then it allows me to dig a little bit deeper and get more specific. And that's where so I see just Rosario on the inner turf, but then I got even deeper to say, once I dig through those charts, I noticed when Rosario and Clement get together on the inner turf, right? Routing on the turf, this is something special. This might be some intent here of his go-to for this type of race. So again, that's what kind of helps me. It's a good example of how you can really get more and more deeper into it and find some stuff that may not be just readily jumping off the page to you with the specifics.
And one thing leads to another. We don't have time to go into like every angle here, and I don't know if you've run this or not, but the first thing I see, the next thing I think of when I see that angle is it makes me want to say, ooh, I wonder how Chad Brown does inner turf to outer turf. And with a few clicks, you'd be able to put that study together and see. And maybe there's no signal in it at all. Maybe he does the same win percentage as his baseline in both those categories. But maybe you find an area where you can actually look to once in a while, if you don't love the horse on paper, oppose a Chad Brown runner at Saratoga rather than just play them reflexively the way so many horse players do. I just bring that up as an example of the type of thing you can do with this program. Shall we roll through a couple more of these if you've got a few more?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the ones that show, and also too, the ones that show up in red are your negative angles, right? So that's where it's going the opposite way of showing. I have it as a success score of anything like 3 and below. Again, it's just telling you that this angle, probably both on an ROI standpoint and a win percentage standpoint, just not working, right? So,
and when you say red, you mean like a bright red flag, not these these other, like that one, that one, like cold the cell.
So the opposite to Churchill on the dirt is Churchill to the turf, right? Totally different, right? So a totally different perspective of just not thinking all these horses from Churchill are doing well. Not the case, right? Break that down. I have different form angles, right? Second after the layoff, out of the money in the last start, 8 to 30 days away. Again, it just emphasizes how specific. You can be general, but if you want to get really specific and look, and you'll see some that say like Saratoga test turf. Usually I will deactivate those. I will most likely do that. But what I do, and I want to build just looking at it, I'll run a quote angle, but it's more research. I'll just say, show me every race on the turf at Saratoga.
Mm-hmm.
And then this massive file shows up. And then I start to go through the charts and to see if I notice any consistencies, any patterns, or anything that I want to dig a little bit deeper into. That's where I start to get the ideas to build different angles and different research.
That sounds like the next level, another webinar, seminar type thing down the line. We'll learn a little bit more like that, because that's I can kind of get my head around it, but I don't want to go down that particular rabbit hole now. I was curious, what was the other? There was another negative angle associated with the same horse. What was that one?
So this is a form angle. So if you're looking at second start off after a layoff, out of the money in the last start, 8 to 30 days away, right? I'm just trying to see is there any, so this is more of a general angle. But what I would like to do is if I were to click on this, I can then dig a little bit deeper and see what the numbers are, right? And then also too, I can see once the chart comes up that, if I look at like details, right? So again, these are massive stats, right? We're looking at a lot, as large of a sample as you can possibly get. But then when I go to the details, I can sort a bit more and say, okay, is there any trainer that's just really not successful, utilizing this particular, this particular type of profile, right? So again, that's where you can start to like dig in just a little bit deeper and see exactly what comes up. Now, again, when you're running some of these bigger files and you're running some of these bigger angles, it will take sometimes a bit to run through that. So it's always the downfall too, especially doing a live demonstration. But again, clicking on those details will show you that, right? So again, I won't bring it up, but like if you click on that and look to see, are there any trainers? Is there any particular, other deeper profile that I can build that I want to create now another angle off of this, right? To do a bit more research. And again, like you said, you're going to build a lot of angles that suck. That's just the way it is. All day long. I think that I have one of the best ideas going of something that I'm watching. I'll literally be I think the best, if you're simulcasting at home, the RTN channel for the OTB channel, got the 4 different tracks going, Seth Merrill popping every once in a while, but I'll have my eyes glancing at other stuff and say, that's interesting, at Gulfstream on the synthetic or something. And I'll run the angle and it'll come back, 14% winners, negative 20% are like as most plain vanilla as possible, where, hey, the numbers really aren't matching what my eyes are seeing, but that's still fruitful, still helpful to do something like that.
Sometimes you're just going to say that dog don't hunt. That's just the
Right.
way. That's just the way it goes. Something like this is interesting. One thing that it's tricky to draw too much out of it, but I do often give a lot of credit to these to second off layoff horses that probably I'll excuse that bad race back, and say, oh, maybe they just needed it. But I will say that the way you dealt with the days between starts, maybe them coming back so quickly, the way modern training works, maybe that's some of why this one is so meh. I mean, these are worse results than I would have guessed. I would have guessed that number would be pretty close to what the overall baseline was, or maybe even a little bit better. But I think it does teach you something about modern training, especially when things don't go to plan, i.e. not an in-the-money finish off the layoff. They're very often going to take more like 5 weeks or even longer. But anyway, that's that. We can get into that another time. I do have a little bit of an agenda for us I want to hold on to. I'd love to go back and have you explain the win probability that we're seeing there on the screen. Get your honest opinion of how much you look into that and how important that is to your handicapping. And I want to see the process of how we physically build an angle, even if we don't want to do an entire one. If you can show us how that works. From there, I'd love to ask you about some of the angles you're in particularly excited about following this Saratoga meet. And maybe we'll wrap up with some examples from the first few days of the Saratoga meet, if you're down with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the win probability, that flows into another nice option that you have available here, which I refer to that is called True Odds, right? So that's their AI portion of Race Lens, right? So if I just click on the True Odds, it's going to bring up the race and give me all of their AI data of their win projections, how the win projections relate to a fair value, right? Now, obviously, you're not going to get the best version here because the morning line odds are not present. So when the morning lines are present, that's where you're going to see this to be a bit different, where if their projected value is, let's say, like we talked about a horse last week that was 9-5 versus a 10-1 morning line, that's going to highlight in yellow. So that'll show up clearly on there of a fair value that is far better than what the morning line is, right?
Very interesting.
Gives their projection of the race as well, using the Equibase pace figures. You can actually hover over the horse and it'll tell you what the early pace figures are of each one.
Cool.
Right. And then you'll see the middle pace here. Same thing. You'll get an idea. Here's one function I like. And I refer to Christina Blacker uses a lot on TVG. I love this. This is one of my favorite things of the True Odds feature. Over here for late pace, you can actually just sort. If I click on it, it will rank every horse in the late pace figure going forward, right? So if I have a fast pace race and I just want to quickly see what does Equibase project on late pace figure to be the horses that are going to have the best fleet of foot late, I can click on that and it'll show me exactly what those horses are, right? So again, another simple click that I like. And what I'll add to this is where it gets good. This is very mobile friendly as well. You could bring up on your phone. But also too, when you're watching the races live, all of this is in real time, right? So these projected odds comparison to their fair value, the fundamental odds is more of a combination, right, of their fair value, projected odds, the True Odds projection, and then it also has the in the money odds as well. So what they project horses hitting the board, that all changes in real time as the pari-mutuel board changes as well. So this is something that is not stuck in stone. It does update as the race gets more and more money in the pools. You'll see that adjust and change as well.
Does the algorithm use the public's money as one of its factors? In other words, will a horse being bet make its True Odds go down, or is it independent of that signal?
It's more of the relationship of their fair value versus the morning line of the horse. Like that yellow bar will fall off if you get to a point where it's the fair value is it's just not there anymore based on how the horse is getting bet, right? So it's a way that you can see the function of the betting. How does that change? How does that adjust what their fair value projections are in terms of its value of betting the horse?
And how often do you use the true odds? How often do you use their version of a pace projector? I mean, uh, how much does it factor into your daily play?
I mean, again, I've always I'll shoot everybody straight and be honest. I do look at this as a a resource. I do like time form. I will say this, not to pump my own chest here, but I do have my own pace model and I have my own power index that creates a fair value as well. But what I like is I want to see what other algorithms that have a lot more resources than I do to see what do they project, right? What are their projections of this horse? What's their fair value projection? And then I can get a better idea as to, am I close? Am I on? Am I way off? That kind of thing. So I use as a reference, Pete, rather than something that I would look at specifically to something to use.
I mean, I think in many ways that's a great thing about this program. It seems like something that if you want, there's all their traditional looking PPs in there, and you could make this your be all and end all. But it feels to me like something also. I mean, a lot of the people who are watching are going to be kind of set in the ways of the things that they use, and I think it's really cool that this is something that can be grafted onto that, used in a supplementary fashion. And that's, I'm already scheming ways I want to do that. And for me, I think the number one application that comes up here that I don't see existing anywhere else is the ability to do full on research like we've talked about earlier in the show. And what I want you to demonstrate now is how one would create an angle. And we can use that one that I just threw out there before about Chad Brown. If you have something prepared that you wanted to use, we could do that. I just want people to see physically how they do that, what screen they go to, what buttons they click, etc.,
Yep.
etc.
One thing real quick, well, just very quickly, and I'll jump back to that, Pete.
Yes.
So before we do that, another key thing is this research tab. I like this, especially for 2-year-old races. So if I click on this research tab, it literally gives me a breakdown of the trainer, jockey, sire, dam, everything here, win percentage, in the money, the ROI, median win. If I want to look at all the PPs that are in this data set, I click open here. It brings up the Equibase charts again. But like if I'm looking at it from a 2-year-old standpoint, I know this isn't a 2-year-old race, but I get an idea, right? I get a quick snapshot by just clicking to see what do the sires in this race look like, right?
That's great.
Click on the dam, like what are we looking at here? I see a nice positive ROI, 28% win percentage, 18 starters, but 1 horse, right? So that might change my thought because, okay, who is this horse? So again, you're looking at as much diversity as you can here, just to try to build a better case for those races that might be more difficult, that you don't have a lot of information.
Can you see the dam's produce if you open up that tab, or does it not go that far?
So when you open this up, it will so you can go into what the horses are here. I do believe so it gives you the horse name here. There's a way that you can go into, if you go to the sire PPs, or if you go to in this case the dam PPs, it will bring that up. There's an extra click to get there, but you can then start to drill through the progeny in there.
Still.
And even on the PPs will give you kind of a second layer of progeny as well when it comes to the sire and dam progeny.
But the idea that research tab in a given race will take you to that next level to look at trainer, jockey, sire, and dam. That's pretty cool, and it surfaces pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get to the question that I think where the most value of this particular platform comes into play is you want to build an angle, right? So if you click on manage angles, this is going to show all of the angles that I have. Now, when you do get a subscription, you will see that Race Lens builds in their very own. So it's included. So you're not going to start from complete scratch with nothing on there. Now, here's what I like about that. If you're brand new to it, my wife makes fun of me all the time because when we buy anything, say something from like IKEA that has 10,000 parts to it, she is meticulous at reading all of the directions and going through it and doing step by step. I'm more of the dump it out and let's see if I can put it all together and maybe I can modify it a little bit or do my own version of it. Drives her crazy, but I think that type of mentality helps here, because if you click on any of these, say you have no idea really how to do it, if you click on it, it will show you exactly where to find all of those different pieces that built the overall angle, right? So again, just to do something very, very quick here. So if I click on it, it's going to show you like under stat trainer, the distance, right? And then we're going to say set the ROI to greater than or equal to 10, right? And I know this might be over your head to start, but I just want to give you an idea of like how you can kind of deconstruct and start to get ideas where stuff are. So what I would do is when I started, I would just make notes of like, okay, I want that same type of trainer ROI stat. I'm going to write that down and see where that is. So then when we go back to it, right, what you want to do is you create a new angle. Right. So again, just want to give you that as an example. If you want to try to deconstruct some of the canned stuff that comes with it, when you go to create a new angle, this is where the whole thing opens up. Right. So if I want to do a basic filter, I can select by track, surface, course, distance, class, purse, age restrictions, track condition. If you want to do sloppy, wet, fast, whatever shows up in the Equibase chart, you can basically research. Right. So it's pretty extensive in those charts. So again, you could do a lot of different things when it comes to it. Field size, if you want to look at that as well. You could do circuits on here too. So include circuit. I can just put Naira or New York, and it'll encompass, all of the tracks that are part of Naira. So again, this kind of gives you the basic idea. If you do surface, it does have all weather as well. You want to make sure that some charts that don't separate the two between the dirt and the all-weather, I like to select this just to make sure I'm not getting any all-weather tracks that are included in any angle. I can select that. Different courses too, right? If a race comes off the turf as well, right, that gives you an idea. That can give you some ideas for different angles. Wet dirt, wet turf. So there's a lot of different things that you can look at just from the very basics of the first tab. So that kind of gives you your overall, your track, your course, surface, and then you can kind of dig in from there. The profile tab, again, this is where you get into a lot of the deeper stuff with trainers, jockeys, horse, sire, dam. This one's interesting, right? And I've got, there's a few different angles that I like to look at, again, for Saratoga, for ownership groups maybe that they want to get folks in the winner circle. Listen, let's face it, it's a business. What better way to get people excited about investing in your program than to get them in the winner circle at Saratoga and have them go home and say, I had the best experience ever. Check this out. I'm on TV. I'm in the winner circle, right? Like, think about that from just a business standpoint. This might sound crazy, but there's ways that you can actually go in and build and bring up an owner and see what their stats are at Saratoga, right? So like, I'll give you just a quick, for instance, of one for Klarovich. I mean, for horses, they drop down. So 5 or more points on the Equibase class scale, right? 50%, 14 runners, 50% winners, right? And a positive 81% ROI. Rapoli, something similar to there too, of 43% winners and a positive 8% ROI. So again,
no negative class drop there.
Right. I'm not saying that's the intent, but man, I'm telling you, I think it's just, it factors in sometimes where you might be questioning a drop of a horse. Maybe not so much. That might be part of a bigger business plan that you may not be aware of.
Yeah. And in there, I think in those two instances, perfect examples of dropping to win races, because, winning a title at Saratoga, priceless to either of those individuals for sure. But yeah, I'd love to see what happens if you run it through West Point or Little Red Feather or our friends at Adelphi or whomever. You might get to see how aggressive ownership groups are willing to be to get that win that's worth more than money up at the Saratoga race meet. Something I think we're going to be seeing a lot of in terms of, how big these field sizes, I'm guessing, are going to be, especially in the early part of the meet. People, it's the normal economics go out the window in many ways when you're looking at a meet like Saratoga or Del Mar, and you can use RaceLens as a tool to help you find out what's what. And, or, maybe everybody's trying to do it. Let's look at which ones are actually doing it successfully. And the public is still, everybody knows this, right? And yet the public is still clearly underrating some of those droppers because the ROI is positive and the success scores are high. So I think that's a really good example. What are those other two tabs you have down there?
Yeah. So quickly on the horse side, this is probably one I think that's very in depth and a lot of different things that you can look at, right? For the specific horse, surface, distance, class, post position, the morning line odds. You could do a morning line relative to the closing odds to see like if there's any kind of substantial change for certain types of horses, whether it's trainers, for a sire, 2-year-old sire, etc. I think the run style is interesting too. So it brings in all of those classic run styles. So if I click here, projected on the lead, early presser, sustained, right? So all of those traditional, modern pace handicapping, specifics you can put in there. You can actually run angles that are based on the run style of the horse. So
great stuff.
Different like sales information. Again, best late pace. I use that quite a bit. If I want to run an angle to see like a late pace figure for a particular distance or surface at a track. So again, that kind of gives you we're very much in depth on the horse side. All of it is very similar for the jockey and trainer as well. So I know it's a lot of information, but again, this is why you got to spend a little time with it. I love doing these. So if more you want to do these, Pete, and pop on and give some more ideas, maybe do it by specific topic.
Yeah.
Be happy to do that. The stat side of it is this is where you get like those ROI angles. If you want to run it by horse, trainer, jockey, particular sire or dam, and you want to see, if I sire, I can just show the surface, blinkers on, blinkers off, the track, the surface, ROI, win percentage, in the money, greater than or equal to. So you can play around with all that stuff and see what you can find and start digging around and see if you can find some positive stuff. Again, it's your stuff, right? So it's not something that you're buying that's telling you, hey, this is what our research tells us. This is more where you can do kind of grab the controls and start to build your own information.
It's very, very interesting. And we will definitely have to do more things. And maybe, with the magic of some video editing, we can do one where we really do run a bunch of angles and can show them, and it'll be a little bit more entertaining than waiting for the spinning wheel too. That's another idea for a future project as well.
Yeah. One thing, so on the last one, on the case side, you can start to do like situational, right? Days between starts, right? To go do some layoff stuff, medication, right? If you want to see first time Lasix, second time Lasix, off Lasix, first time blinkers on, right? All those different equipment changes. Gelding, first time gelding, second time, those you can run there. Last race, 2 backs, you can start to build some progression of those races, looking at going a few races back. One thing I'll go to, so again, like finish position, beaten lengths, the true odd side. If you say, okay, you know what, I want to know how successful these true odd projections are, you can actually run angles using the AI part of it, right? Converting what their projections are to a win percentage, right? So I like to run these like, give me a 50% edge over and above like their expected win percentage, and let me see how that works, right? Let me see how successful it is. And it's extremely successful, right? So it brings a little bit of the AI to a specific horse, then you can then make your own decision on something like that. So I just wanted to bring that up because you can actually run angles against what the AI part of the program is telling you and see if you can come up with your own ideas there as well. Again, Equibase speed and pace figures, whether they're ascending, you can look at their last pace figure, middle pace figure, early pace figure. So you can handicap really all parts of it, but handicap it by building the data and seeing what the results are and see if there's anything that jumps out to you that might be interesting to take a look at to play. So I know it's a quick run through of all the different tabs, but the key part is you can really find just about anything on there. Anything that you're really looking for, you can find.
It's pretty amazing. I look forward to delving into it myself and chatting more with you about it. Let's talk turkey, specifically about this Saratoga meet. We talked about some angles already based on those opening day PPs that popped up. From the research you've done, what are some of the other things you're really looking most forward to seeing this Saratoga meet? What will you have your eye on?
Yeah, some of the general angles, like if you look at post position, if you look at last year, 7 furlongs on the dirt, on the rail seem to be very, very good. 47 starters, 22% winners with a positive 57% ROI.
That's surprising.
So again, gives you an idea of a strong rail position, again, specifically going 7 on the dirt. The other, I mean, again, there's several different post position angles you run. Nothing really jumped off. I'll give you the ones that there's some stuff that has jumped off a bit. If you look at like go to the opposite side, look at turf routes, posted 10 or more. If you look at it as 85 starters, only 3 winners, right? So 4% on the win side, negative 72% ROI. So again, a couple of things to look at it from, inside dirt, outside on the turf course, right? Looking at some different ideas there as to what their successes are on a general standpoint. I mentioned in terms of tracks, different tracks. I'll summarize this a little bit. One that was kind of interesting was horses coming in from Woodbine, going from that synthetic surface onto the dirt here. 25% winners, 50% in the money, and 22% positive 22% ROI. Thought that was interesting, something to fold in there. We talked about the Churchill angle, right? So successful on the dirt, but just totally different on the turf. Another thing that I did too was I broke down. You can actually look and research how morning line favorites have done, right? So I think that's something that's interesting. See how strong that morning line is, and Aragona I think is the best in my opinion at doing it. It's such a tough job to do, but something that I would a few things that I would look at here. One of them really jumped off the page. So I broke it down by all different classes. The state bred dirt routes, 48 starters, 52% of the morning line favorites have won, with still a positive ROI of 33%. So I thought that was interesting. And then a couple ones in terms of graded stakes company, dirt routes, 41 starters, 44% wins that were morning line favorites in those dirt routes. Negative ROI, negative 15% ROI, but I think that's to be understood. But negative 15%, not terrible, right? So Again, high win percentage, right? Something to consider. One I thought was interesting was the 4 turf graded stake turf races, turf sprints, 4 races, not one morning line favorite one. So there you go. If you want to look at it going against the public there, I think that's an interesting side angle. In terms of, again, I've got a bunch here, but I know we've kind of gone through quite a bit. Looking at 2-year-olds, I think there's some interesting stuff there. I know JK is familiar with Lope de Vega. Again, just dropped a little bit, was 0 for 4 last summer, but again, looking at 24 starts, 42% winners for 2-year-old first-time starters for this sire, 60% in the money and a positive 30% ROI. So that's a sire you see show up quite a bit at Saratoga. Again, Nyquist speaks for itself, but just some sires that you'll see show up in the PPs at Saratoga. I knocked Kenny McPeak last weekend, and he threw it right back in my face with a $55 horse. So what I'll do is I'll give him some props here. So Kenny McPeak has been successful with 2-year-old first-time starters, turf routes, 23 starters, 22% wins. And a whopping 173% ROI. So not giving him respect at the windows, but he's been pretty successful routing those horses on the turf for 2-year-olds.
Something that, obviously I think a lot of these are going to be, younger horses, but that was basically the angle. That's basically you could argue that was the exact angle with the horse the other day who came up and bit us. Matt and I weren't complimentary either, though I will say, to our defense, we were talking about that when Emmanuel was in the race. It did the situation changed, and I got a little stubborn. Not that I was ever going to push that horse to an extreme degree, but certainly it felt like a whiff, and a horse that definitely should have been included as a backup after the fact. We got to go back and look and own the blame when it's ours, and understand why things happen when they didn't. And I definitely think, I'll just throw that in there. But yeah, the McPeak going long on the turf thing, I think is it especially for 2-year-olds? Am I remembering that right?
Yes. So that's for 2-year-old first time starters on the turf, routing on the turf. Just thought that was interesting because I don't think that's the public gravitation when it comes to a particular horse like that on the turf. routing 2-year-olds. I think there's other, bigger names that I think have the gravitation. So again, that's why I like to run these numbers, and you can do that here to see exactly what the success has been. So that was one that jumped off the page a little bit for me. Give you a couple drop in class. So 50% tag drops here. Asmussen, he only had 8 starters last year, but 50% of them were winners and a positive 219% ROI. So that's not a bad return on those 4 runners there. Same thing when Maker and Ortiz tag up with a class drop, or these tag drops of 50% or more, 60% winners with a positive 46% ROI. So again, some connections, some intent there, get you some good stats on some of those particular situations. See if there's anything else that really jumped off here.
Any other favorites? And then maybe we can just talk about a couple more horses from the first. I don't know how far ahead you've looked at this point, but we've got 2 days drawn. If you wanted to throw out any specific horses as well.
Yeah, a couple of things I'll add in terms of the graded stakes angles here. Obviously, don't sleep on Mike Smith. I know he's getting up there, but he certainly has tremendous numbers out here. 21 starters at Saratoga, 57% winners in graded stakes company, positive 104% ROI. So again, don't sleep on Mike, even when the old age that he's getting up to. One thing I thought was interesting, and I'll probably put Julian Leparoux in the winner's circle with this one. Graded stakes on the dirt for Julian Leparoux. He has 0 for 18. So I thought that was that's an interesting stat on the dirt. So just 28% of them are in the money too. So those are 2 I thought were interesting on the graded stakes standpoint there. No other. There's a bunch of others there. Maybe we can put this out in more of a kind of on the plus side for more of a list.
Yeah, that's a great idea. If you're willing to do a little bit of a write-up, why not? I mean, we didn't mean to upsell everybody here, but we do have our loyal.
I said it,
plus.
so blame me. So
we do have our loyal plus people as well in the moneypodcast.com/plus to learn about that. But you're also going to be on a whole bunch during the meet, and we'll be talking about these as they come up too. But I think that gives people some a little bit of meat on the bone, some things to look for out of the gate, some things that are contradictory, I think, to conventional wisdom. I think a lot of people think 7 furlongs on the dirt, and the rail often breaks half a step slow and can be disadvantageous. The numbers say something very different, something that we'll look at as the meet goes on. But it's also the kind of thing you could see, maybe depending on how I could see they change the rail position slightly. Instead of a horse breaking slightly in, it's more like a traditional sprint where they get away with alacrity and the normal advantage of inside and sprints plays. It's good to know that that's something that's happening. I think you had a couple of good ideas in terms of connections. The Smith one, when you said that one out loud, I was thinking are there a whole lot of Baffert horses in that sample and therefore not something we're going to have to be necessarily worrying about this summer? I don't know, but it's good to know that the antenna should go up if we do see him coming to Saratoga. Lots of good ideas there, and we appreciate your wisdom, and there'll be more to come.
Yeah, I think that one is a little more obvious, and there's a lot of Baffert connections in there. But again, if a jockey's coming out from the West Coast for one race, sure he thinks he's picking up a check, right? So this is a commission business. So I'm sure he's thinking cashing a check when he's out there. But it's an idea where you can look at some of maybe other jockeys you notice that are showing up in weird spots. Like I have an angle of Daisuke Fukumoto from Woodbine coming down to Aqueduct for a particular trainer, and the numbers are off the charts, and they're in like these weird maiden races. So it's like you can get into all that information. That was actually a nice NHC horse that I hit. It was like 11-1 or 12-1 or something like that, where I said, I have no opinion. I need some prices because I'm struggling here, and I played him and he won. So you never know. It doesn't have to be those higher profile connections. You can look at, maybe you start to notice something and you start to build that, see what it looks like.
We've just got about 5 minutes left, Matt. Let's talk about some specific horses on these first couple of days. You got anything for us?
Again, I the couple horses that we had mentioned before on the Thursday card. I think it's a pretty difficult card. There's nothing really that I would say that jumps out at me as a horse that I really want to drive and play back. There's a horse on if you look to on Friday in the third race, that mile and a 16th. Again, that angle comes up again with Rosario and Clement on the inner turf. But I thought Mr. Connecticut was very interesting in that race. Probably going to catch some money there, but I think there's some competition there. And I'm not just saying that because I'm from Connecticut, which, by the way, very happy to hear. I did not know that the Salevos are from New Haven, which is where I grew up. So I like that. And yes, it is the best pizza in the world, and I will not accept any other answer to that.
We got to get you to Brooklyn, but I'm not saying I have a dog in this fight. I've only eaten New Haven pizza once, and it was awesome. But as a Brooklynite, I have to at least suggest us as one of the plausible alternatives, along with Naples, Italy, not Florida, that I think at least deserve to be in the conversation. But yeah, they want to get a win with Mr. Connecticut, named for Miguel Clement, of course. Somewhat facetiously, I might add. They want to get a win. Maybe he hasn't turned out to be the horse that they wanted to be, and I'm sure in particular it was very hard for Miguel to geld, to be involved in the gelding of his namesake a couple of races back. But if nothing else, like I mentioned, those wins at Saratoga worth more than money. That's a win picture that will hang in the household forever should they get it done. So Mr. Connecticut, definitely one who deserves some extra consideration.
One thing to add to that, though, so obviously that angle that we talked about, but another angle I ran there too, of more of just identifying these horses that have the best early and late pace, right? It seems obvious, but again, I want my attention drawn to that, right? So I've got a jockey with intent. I trust him on the front end. I also trust the clock in his head to utilize that late pace as best as possible too. So for me, that's why I want to look at that again. Probably will take some money here, but I think that best early and late pace, connections on the inner turf, like that's a horse on a data perspective that I looked at the horse on a handicapping side and felt the same. And that's a horse I definitely want to look to use on Friday. So not an opening day, but a horse I saw on Friday that I think is interesting.
And I'll mention one more thing. You say it's obvious, and it is when you say it, that the horse with the best early and best late should win a lot. But remember, this is one of the cool things about Racelands, that they're having this very obvious and easy to use late pace rating for every race. That's something you have to compute manually if you're looking at Timeform US. So just the fact that it's going to highlight those horses for you, that's worth something as well.
Yeah, and you can see how in different places that work. I had one at Gulfstream. It was more weather related to or best early and late pace. When it didn't rain for like 2 weeks, if I can find a horse with the best early and late pace on the turf, it was like a blind bet. The horses just never stopped. They just kept going. But again, that's stuff that you can build in and it'll automatically show up once you build that profile. Again, Chad's got I think Grape Nuts Warrior is interesting. That's in that state bred in the sixth race. Again, going a mile on the 16th. I think is interesting. Coming out of Belmont. Obviously Chad, doing extremely well. I hope he has one of those like soft starts. Everybody says that he's done and don't bet him anymore. And, and his prices go through the roof and I get to bet him back again. So those were a couple of horses, Pete. Again, I would say kind of in the infancy stages of digging into to both of these cards here. But no, I think off the top, I've got a couple of horses that I like and want to see what those prices look like.
The Clement Rosario angle is there basically all day in that Grape Nuts Warrior race. You've also got Straw into Gold, potential exacta partner, I suppose, with Grape Nuts. And then in the featured Forbidden Apple, which is also contested on the inner turf. They team up again in a race that has a bunch of other ways to go. But I have to say, City Man looks pretty strong on paper in that spot as well. So a handful of ideas on opening weekend on that Friday card from Matt and loads of great info throughout the show. Just want to spend our last couple minutes thanking you again. I'll read those promo codes again for people who maybe have gotten interested as we've gone along. But, appreciate this. Appreciate that you'll be contributing to Plus and also loads of stuff on the free side over on the late week show. Maybe we'll have to do another demo before the meet's over too.
Absolutely. I know it's a lot. So, it might be a little tough at first, but I promise you, once you start to get comfortable with it, you start to realize how it can be beneficial for you and realize the ease of getting a lot of information. I really do think it's going to help. It's going to help your traditional handicapping and make a much more complete play.
New customers, you get the first month for only $1 with that promo code in the money. And then you have the ability, if you're already a customer, 40% discount on any unlimited Race Lens subscription. So, you start with a month there, I suppose, and you take it from there. In the money 40. That's the code you use for that. And to get to the screen where you can take this to the next level, we made a little pretty link. You can go to the Equibase website and navigate over to Race Lens, or go to inthemoneypodcast.com/Race Lens. We thank our partners at Race Lens. We thank everybody for tuning in. We recommend that you go ahead and follow us wherever you get your podcasts, on the YouTube channel as well. Rate, review, subscribe, do all those fun things. Thank you to you, Matt. Thank you to Race Lens. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to producer Craig for producing the show. Always great to get to work with him. And we'll see you next time over at In the Money Media. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.
Just me.